What if I told you King Von's death wasn't just the result of a street beef, but that someone from his own circle may have opened the door and left him face to face with death? Today, I'm going to show you the details straight from police files to shocking claims made by Vanny's father that connect it all into one dark story of betrayal. And by the end, you'll have to decide for yourself who the real killer was. Officials confirmed that one of the 3 people shot and killed was Chicago rapper King Von, whose real name was Davon Bennett. He had been in town the night before with friends, a group of 6 in total. Among them was Vanny, whose father has now made some shocking claims alleging that King Von had support from none other than Lil Durk. Vanny's father has recently shared something that he says changes the way people need to look at what happened. He claims there is fresh evidence that connects certain moments and conversations together. And when you see them side by side, they seem to tell a story of betrayal that might have come from within Vanny's own circle. It was not just about what happened on the surface. According to him, there were signs that someone close could have played a role in setting the stage for tragedy. He described it as a backdoor situation, a term that in street language means a setup, a move made by someone you trust who quietly opens the way for harm to reach you. He made it clear that, in his mind, he has all the puzzle pieces. It is not just one conversation, one payment, or one rumor. It is a chain of events that, when lined up, point towards something more calculated than a random act of violence. One of the key moments he spoke about was a conversation between Durk and Vanny. In this exchange, Durk allegedly asked, "Is it open?" And Vanny, without hesitation, responded, "It's off the hinges." On the surface, those words could mean almost anything, but in the context he provided, they took on a far heavier meaning. The timing of this exchange is what made it so suspicious to him. He says that, according to what he knows, this conversation happened the very same day a payment was allegedly made to Lil Durk, the man many believe played a direct role in what happened to King Von. That connection between the words spoken and the payment made created a chilling picture in his mind. When he was asked directly if he believed Vanny had set up King Von, he stopped short of saying a clear yes. He did not come right out and accuse his own blood of betrayal in plain words. But everything else he said, the way he pieced together the timeline, the way he hinted at the meaning behind those conversations, the way he kept using the term backdoor left the impression that he believed there was more to the story than most people know. From his point of view, it was as if certain doors were not just left unlocked, but completely removed from their frames. That phrase, "off the hinges," suggested more than just an opportunity. It suggested there was nothing left to stop whatever was coming. And if you look at it the way he does, the people who should have been guarding Von's back might have been the ones who made it possible for his enemies to reach him. The weight of his words is not just in the accusations themselves but in what they mean for the larger story. If true, it would mean that this was not just a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It would mean there were moves being made behind the scenes, conversations being had in private, and money changing hands, all pointing toward a betrayal that cuts deep into the idea of loyalty and trust. Betrayal from a stranger is one thing, betrayal from someone you call family is something else entirely. It shakes the foundation of how you see the people closest to you. In the streets, loyalty is not just a word, it is a survival tool. Once that is broken, everything changes. And for Vanny's father, that is the part that hurts the most. The idea that King Von's downfall could have been helped along by someone within his circle makes the tragedy heavier. It is not only about losing a son, a friend, or a leader. It is about realizing that the enemy might not have been on the outside at all. And if that is the case, then nothing about that night was accidental. It was planned. Vanny's father did not give every single detail. He left gaps in his story, perhaps because some things cannot be proven in a courtroom but are still deeply believed on the streets. Still, the pieces he did share, the suspicious conversation, the alleged payment, the timing, and his constant reference to the back door, have left people wondering if there is a much darker truth waiting to be uncovered. Whether all of this will ever be confirmed is another matter, but one thing is certain. In the eyes of Vanny's father, the story the public has been told is not the full story. He believes the truth involves a level of betrayal that is almost too painful to speak aloud, but too important to keep hidden forever. Vanny's father insisted that before anything else, a motive needed to be clear. He claimed to have financial records and statements proving the money involved, along with text messages from a lawyer about who had informed on Durk and Von. When asked why Lil Durk would want Von gone, he suggested jealousy and business rivalry, saying, Vaughn was not in a binding contract with Durk, and his rapid rise might have been seen as a threat. How can you bring someone into the game and let them surpass you? Nobody wants their spot taken, he said. He also accused Durk of lying in interviews, pointing out that Vaughn was never officially signed to him and even had to rely on a public defender. Despite wearing expensive jewelry, these statements fueled speculation online, with one viral tweet questioning why Durk often went live on Instagram right after people close to him died, such as King Von, Lil Pab, and FBG Duck. The theory was that Durk could later use these live sessions as proof of his location when questioned by police. But things took another turn when Vanny's father accused his own son of turning federal and snitching on Lil Durk to clear his own name. He claimed Vanny orchestrated both Lil Pab's and King Von's killings, and now was talking to authorities. In his world, if someone snitches on you, you're allowed to do the same. And he made no effort to hide his feelings. The biggest revelation came from newly released police records about King Von's final moments. Hospital staff reported that Vaughn survived 2 surgeries after being shot. But according to a nurse, he woke up startled when she entered the room, jumped out of bed, and began fighting her, asking where his was. He then went into shock, which ultimately caused his death. This detail, the nurse claimed, was not even known to Vaughn's mother at the time. Questions began to swirl about how anyone could know what happened inside King Von's hospital room unless they were actually there. But what raised even more eyebrows was the fact that police believed Vaughn may have been backdoored by someone close to him. That suspicion lined up with the claims being leaked by Vanny's father, who also pointed fingers at Lil Durk. The police files only made things look stranger. They revealed that Vaughn had hired bodyguards specifically to protect him that night. But when the fight broke out, every single one of them backed away instead of stepping in. "You're getting paid to protect him," one person said in disbelief. "How do you just let him walk over and fight? He's not supposed to touch anyone, your job is to keep him safe." According to critics, those bodyguards should have cleared Quando Rando and his crew from the area. Instead, they vanished, and one even deleted his Instagram afterward. To some, it reeked of foul play, especially since the guards were reportedly part of a company paid by Lil Durk to protect artists like King Von. Police later reviewed an interview with Quando Rando, where he described what happened that night and even mentioned Von's final words. But to fully understand, they said, you had to start with the newly released police files. According to those records, on November 5, 2020, King Von and his crew prepared to celebrate his album release in Atlanta. It was meant to be a huge night. Growing up in O Block, Von understood the dangers of being in public, so his crew rolled deep. 25 people spread across 8 SUVs. His manager, 100K Track, said Von always took heavy precautions, traveling in a bulletproof truck with multiple security guards and loyal friends who would protect him more fiercely than any hired team could. At first, the night went smoothly. The club was packed, the energy was high, and the celebration was in full swing. But at around 2 a.m., plans shifted. The group began leaving, intending to head back to their hotels and Airbnb. Von sat in his Escalade, locked into his phone, texting someone for about 20 minutes. The rest of the crew assumed they were heading home until Von suddenly told his driver to go to another spot. The Monaco Lounge. That was the first move in a chain of events that would change everything. Von's decision was kept so quiet that the rest of the team only found out after he had already arrived at the lounge. His DJ called others, saying, "We're here by ourselves, where are you guys?" Everyone then rushed to join him. When 1.OK Track got to Monaco, he noticed something was off. Von, normally upbeat and full of energy, was quiet and withdrawn, still glued to his phone. He stayed in the SUV for 30 to 35 minutes before finally agreeing to go inside. But club rules meant the crew had to leave all their weapons in their cars, so security went in first to check the area. Even then, something about the night didn't feel right. After nearly half an hour of waiting in his SUV, Von finally told his team, "Let's go." Security began checking the inside and outside of the Monaco Lounge, making sure everything seemed safe. But the real danger wasn't inside the club, it was waiting in the parking lot, just a few cars away. Quando Rondo was sitting in his own vehicle with a couple of his crew members, trying to get some rest. One of Von's security guards spotted him and quickly ran back to the Escalade, knocking on Von's window. "Do you know Quando Rondo is here?" he asked. The moment Von heard this, he slid his phone into his pocket and jumped out of the SUV, ready to confront him. Friends tried to calm him down, urging him not to start anything, but Vaughn was already walking toward the white vehicle where Quando sat. Without hesitation, he moved around the front, spotted him, and immediately started throwing punches. Within seconds, Lil Tim, Quando's close friend, emerged from the back of the white car with a gun and opened fire. Vaughn was hit several times, and his manager was struck once in the leg. Some of Vaughn's real street friends, who were armed, fired back at Lil Tim, knocking him to the ground. Strangely, the paid security guards who were supposed to use their weapons were seen running away and hiding, leaving Vaughn's street friends to defend him. Gunfire echoed through the lot, drawing the attention of two off-duty officers nearby. Another on-duty officer arrived from the opposite side. They coordinated over their radios, counted down from 3, and then fired into the area in an attempt to break up the chaos. In the crossfire, one of Vaughn's closest friends was also hit. Through it all, Vaughn remained in the street with Quando. Rumors swirled online that Quando was trying to snatch Vaughn's chain, but Vaughn's manager, 100K-Track, said it was the opposite. Vaughn was holding onto Quando, using him as a shield. The police files agreed, stating that Vaughn gripped him tightly, saying, "You're not going anywhere," even while injured. When the shooting stopped, Vaughn's best friend, Moo, rushed in, shoved Quando aside, and carried Vaughn to a getaway car. Meanwhile, Quando, Lil Tim, and their crew fled in their white vehicle, heading for the hospital. Despite being shot 4 times, Vaughn stayed conscious during the ride, calming everyone down and telling them he would be fine. At the hospital, he underwent 2 surgeries and initially pulled through, but according to police files, a nurse later startled him when she entered his room. In shock, he jumped up looking for his gun, which he did not have, and collapsed. This detail had never been made public yet. Rap veteran Boosie had mentioned it in an old interview, claiming there was no reason Vaughn should have been in that situation at all, especially with security. To him, it was another example of poor protection for artists. News of King Von's death spread quickly, dominating national headlines. Officials confirmed one of the 3 people killed was the Chicago rapper, who had been in town with friends when a violent fight between 2 groups spiraled into tragedy. That fight between King Von's crew and Quando Rando's crew didn't just end in gunfire, it sparked a storm of interviews and public statements. Both Quando and Lil Tim, the man who shot Vaughn, eventually spoke out. Quando admitted the whole thing was pointless. "Man, all this could have been handled differently," he said. "We could have done music together, made millions, and kept it legit." Even Lil Tim, who pulled the trigger, explained that in his mind, he was just protecting his little brother. When asked how he felt once he realized it was King Von he'd shot, Tim said, "Damn, if Brewer didn't do that dumb stuff last night, he'd still be alive." He claimed he meant no disrespect to Von's family, and insisted he wasn't chasing clout, just reacting to the situation as it happened. Lil Tim survived his own gunshot wounds and was arrested the very next day. At first, he was denied bond several times, but in 2021 he was granted release on a $100,000 bond. Then, in 2023, his lawyer revealed the charges were dropped entirely before the case was ever even brought to a grand jury. That didn't sit well with Von's best friend Lil Durk and others from O Block. Soon after, news broke of a hit on Quando's crew in Los Angeles. Cameras captured the aftermath. Quando's close friend Lil Pab was killed, and footage showed Quando's devastated reaction at the scene. Months later, Durk appeared to reference the incident in a diss track titled, rapping. "They like Durk. He a singer. He won't do something. I got your folks hit." On another track, "Wonderful Wayne and Jackie Boy," he taunted. "Look on the news and see your son screaming. No, no." Clearly aimed at Quind. Not long after, Durk was arrested in connection with the retaliation. Court records revealed something unexpected. Someone had The leak came from Lil Ted, the younger brother of Durk's right-hand man, Deed. Police arrested Lil Ted at a neighborhood convenience store, where they discovered a firearm in his possession, complete with an extended magazine. The find alone was enough to land him in serious trouble, but the real twist came moments later. As officers began walking him toward the station, his demeanor shifted drastically. Before they even reached the building, Lil Ted's tough exterior collapsed. He began crying openly, his voice shaking as he pleaded with the officers. "I swear, I'll tell y'all about the killings," he blurted out, desperation clear in every word. It was a startling moment, revealing just how quickly fear had overtaken him. In that instant, it became obvious he was ready to trade valuable information for a chance at freedom. He begged the officers to let him go, promising to give them names, details, and anything they wanted to know. But the decision was out of his hands. The arrest was already underway, and no last-minute deal could stop it. Once he was placed in his holding cell, his breakdown only intensified. Tears continued to fall as he begged to speak with anyone who would listen to what he had to say. On the streets, such behavior would be branded as snitching, the ultimate betrayal in a world built on loyalty and silence. But at that moment, Lil Ted was not thinking about street codes or reputations. He was thinking about himself, his future, and the consequences of staying quiet. His willingness to talk would soon send ripples through his circle, setting off a chain reaction that pulled in others, exposed hidden connections, and threatened to unravel loyalties that had once seemed unbreakable. What started at a convenience store was about to spark far bigger consequences. Once locked inside his holding cell, Lil Ted's breakdown continued. His sobs echoed through the room as he became more and more desperate to speak in the coded language of the streets. What he was doing was snitching, openly offering to give up information about serious crimes, even if it meant betraying close associates. But for him, self-preservation had taken over. The weight of possible prison time had shattered whatever loyalty he might have claimed before. He insisted he had details on people who had committed murders, robberies, and other violent acts, and he wanted law enforcement to hear it all. His willingness to talk had a ripple effect that spread quickly. Word got out that Lil Ted was cooperating with the authorities, and it caused others in his orbit to panic. One of the first to follow his lead was Vanny, a known associate of Lil Durk. Vanny had been tied to multiple street rumors already, and now, with the walls closing in, he decided to speak up as well. Once Vanny started talking, the situation escalated further. The shock came when Vanny's own father entered the picture. Instead of defending his son, he added fuel to the fire by telling police what he knew. His statements were not small or vague, they were specific enough to point investigators toward deeper connections, possible motives, and a network of actions, leading back to some of Chicago's most heated street conflicts. With each person talking, the puzzle began to take shape, but it also became more dangerous for those involved. This was no longer a case of a single person cooperating. It had turned into a domino effect, one confession leading to another, each one pulling more names and events into the open. In street life, such a chain reaction is lethal to trust. Once the first crack appears, the entire foundation can collapse. And that is exactly what seemed to be happening. The alliances that had once held firm were now dissolving under the pressure of legal consequences, personal survival, and long-buried secrets. What began as one arrest at a convenience store had quickly snowballed into a wave of finger-pointing that could change the entire narrative surrounding King Von's death and the events that followed. Now, the big question is still hanging in the air. Was Lil Durk really behind the retaliation after King Von's death?